Good evening, everyone. I'm Mayor Patrick Hall. Welcome to this evening's Ordinary Council meeting. It's the 15th of November, Tuesday evening in Perth, and 6 p.m. start. Thank you to one and all for attending this evening. I'd like to make mention of George Beecroft, a former councillor in the gallery tonight. Thank you, George, and members from our community hub at Hillview Hub over at Bentley are here tonight, including, I think, cultural ambassadors. Thank you very much and welcome to this evening's proceedings, and to members of the public at home and those joining us today in the public gallery. At declarations, I do declare the meeting open. We do acknowledge the Whadjuk people, the traditional custodians of the land, and we also pay our respects to elders, both past and present. Council meetings are public meetings, and any information you provide tonight shall be recorded and may be publicly accessible. The council chambers are not a parliament, and parliamentary privilege does not apply. Elected members and staff risk being held personally liable if their comments are defamatory or breach any duty of confidentiality. Statements made during council meetings are solely those of the person making them. Nothing expressed at a council meeting can be attributed to the city unless it is adopted by resolution of council. The confirmed minutes of a council meeting are the official record of that meeting. Verbatim minutes are not required. Nevertheless, the city publishes a recording of the meeting, and recording of council meetings must not be copied, republished or reproduced without the city's express permission. And can I also just ask that anyone present this evening, please turn off your mobile phones, or at least put them on airplane mode for this evening, please, just so they don't interfere with our recording equipment. At item 2, attendance this evening, and apologies, we have none. I'm pleased to see that our entire council is here this evening, so thank you, councillors. Disclosures of interest. CEO, will ask you to actually read those to the meeting, please.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I've received one disclosure of financial interest from Michael Littleton in relation to item 12.1, a report of CEO Performance Review Committee held on the 2nd of November 2022. The nature of my interest is that I am the CEO and I have a financial interest.
Thank you. And the CEO will be leaving the room, the chamber, during that report. No declarations of impartiality. Thank you. At item 3.2, announcements by the presiding member without discussion. Look, I just wanted to say a few words about a really important event that was held late last week, and that was Thursday evening's Camco Engineering Mayor's Charity Gala Dinner, which was held at the Canning Agricultural Horticultural Society on Thursday evening. It was a wonderful event, completely sold out. We had about 300 tickets were sold, so it was a completely sell-out event sometime before the close of tickets, which was wonderful. And the net proceeds from that evening were over $72,000. In fact, nearly $73,000 was handed to Good Semis. And for those of you watching at home, there's the monster cheque, $72,753.85. Thank you, Director Bow. You nearly lost it. You nearly lost an eye there, but you didn't. And that money will actually be put to good use, because Good Sammy's is a really much-loved charity here in Western Australia that actually supports people with disability back into the workforce and finds meaningful employment pathways for them. And they do incredible work out there. And not only that, not only are they a wonderful local Western Australian charity, but they've been here in the city of Canning since 1958. So that's an extraordinary achievement by that charity, and I can tell you they were just thrilled to be part of the event and to be the beneficiaries of the event. And I thank the many members of the community who attended, and in a first for the local government sector, all of the tickets paid for by members. The majority of those were paid by themselves. We had mayors in the room who paid for their own tickets, CEOs from other organisations who paid personally for their own tickets. I paid for my own ticket, as did almost all the councillors that attended on that night, paid personally for their tickets, and they didn't come out of the public purse. We also had members of Parliament, my good friend Dr Jags, Dr Yasma Burakayo, the member for Jandakot, and our own Bill Johnson, the member for Cannington. Not only did they buy tickets, they bought entire tables and invited members of the community along. So on that night, we ended up having many cultural leaders in the room, including the presidents of ISWA, Chungwa, and also the Federation of Indian Associations in WA. we had community leaders, we had sporting club leaders, we had members of the public, and we had elected members and mayors and CEOs from all across the local government sector. And I'm really pleased that the Minister for Local Government came along, Mr John Carey, the Minister for Local Government representing Minister Punch, the Minister for Disability and Small Business. And I can say, hand on heart, he was actually astounded by the night and very pleased to attend, and said some really glowing words about this council. And I wanted to acknowledge the work of this council, who actually supported the intent of the night. The matter did come before this council for discussion on whether or not we would hold the Camco engineering event and whether we would go to the community and seek sponsorship for it. And I'm really pleased to say that that motion was supported by this council. And the result of that has been an extraordinary financial benefit to a very worthy charity. So I very much thank Council for their support of the night and also for the community, and it was a really wonderful event. So thank you all. I won't go on too much about that other than to also thank our staff who put it together. We had an awful lot of people behind the scenes working incredibly hard, and a lot of staff were there on the night, on a Thursday night, gave up their evening, and we're back at it on Friday morning to sort through the aftermath. And it was just a sensational event, very exciting. I was really proud to be there. So thank you to our council and thank you to those members of staff. And those of you who know me and know me well know that since my election in 2019, I and this council have been working very hard to restore the reputation of this council. Since it was dismissed back in 2012, we've all been working very hard to restore the reputation of this council, and I think that we are working our way quickly towards that objective. So thank you once again for your support. I'll move on to item 5, which is reports of delegates without discussion. There are one, I think we have one tonight. No, we don't. There are none. Question times from the public. We have responses to previous questions taken on notice, and those responses to questions will be noted in the minutes for tonight's meeting. Question time from the public. I'm going to open that now. The time, by my recollection, is 8 minutes past 6 p.m. The time set aside for public questions is 15 minutes, which may be extended if necessary. For recording purposes, please state your name and address and then proceed to ask your question. If an answer cannot be provided at tonight's meeting, the question will be taken on notice and an answer will be provided at the next ordinary council meeting. In accordance with policy ADO2, members of the public who have registered their questions with the City's administration shall be called upon in the order in which registrations were received. Written questions will precede verbal questions. And I understand that Mr Sarkar has done exactly that. Mr Sarkar, did you want to come forward and read your questions? I'll get you just to introduce yourself to the meeting, please, and then go ahead. We'll just turn on that microphone. Fabulous, you're on. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My name is Shubh Sarkar. I live in Gibb Street, East Carrington. My first question, does the city distinguish between green title property owners and strata title property owners while providing services such as ranger services? Recently, rangers were called on in a strata title property complex in Williton after snakes were sighted, but the city did not attend, saying that was the strata company's responsibility. All property owners pay rates to our city, so why should they be treated differently?
Director Sarah McQuaid.
Thank you, through you, Mr Mayor. In relation to the city differentiating between complaints received from green title property owners and strata title property owners, the answer is generally no. However, it does depend on the specific issues and locations of the matter being reported. For example, some parking offences can only be dealt with adjacent to a strata complex when the strata management company authorises the city to do so. In relation to snakes specifically, the City's Ranger and Community Safety Service do not respond to matters relating to snakes, irrespective of the location. Residents who find a snake in a garden or a house should contact Wildcare Helpline to be referred to a volunteer reptile remover. If volunteers are unavailable, there are commercial snake removal services able to assist, and the City's website provides relevant contact information for these services.
Thank you. Second question, Mr Sarkar.
Does the city undertake any form of feedback and consultation with residents in the neighbourhood when rezoning blocks for subdivision? If yes, how is the response rate, and has the city in the recent past decided to not go ahead with a subdivision application in Williton as a result of community feedback?
Director Bride.
Yes, thank you, Mr Mayor. Since the new local planning scheme was adopted in early 2020, there's not been many changes to residential densities within the city. The reasoning and justification for the current residential densities are contained within the city's local housing strategy and local planning strategy. But every time there is a proposal to rezone a property, there is a requirement for the proposal to be advertised and for council to consider that feedback post-advertising. In terms of subdivision applications, these are administered by the West Australian Planning Commission and not the city, and are based on the residential density code that applies to a property.
Thank you. Mr Saki, a final question?
Thank you. When was the last time the city removed a tree and planted a new one at a different location after listening to the concerns of residents in Williton? How frequently does the city prune trees, and what is the average timeline from when a concern is raised about a tree to its resolution?
I'll allow that on this occasion, Mr Saki. There's actually 3 questions there, isn't there?
But it's basically on the same subject, and
3 questions there, that's all but I'll allow it on this occasion, but there's 3 questions there. You're allowed to have 3 questions. Director Bowe.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. In relation to the first part of the question, the city has removed a number of trees in Williton in recent times, including as a result of concerns from residents. But the trees would need to comply with the parameters of the policy ET 525, Streetscape and Park Management, trees in streets, thoroughfares and parks. In relation to the second part of Mr Sarkar's questions, the city has 4 tree pruning regimes. The first one is proactive power line pruning to meet Western Power standards. The second is our managed tree inspections and subsequent required works. There are approximately 130 trees on this list that are fully inspected annually, and works required are actioned immediately on those trees. The third element of work is the reactive requests from the community. We receive approximately 3,000 requests for works to street and park trees annually. Depending on the complexity, approximately 90% of all tree-related cases are managed within service levels and completed within 10 to 15 business days. The remaining tree cases are often quite complex and require multiple treatments and may take many months to resolve. The fourth element relates to newly planted trees, which are proactively managed in the first 2 years, where the city completes formative pruning to ensure a great long-term tree is structurally as sound as possible.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr Sarkar.
thank you.
Are there any other questions from the public gallery? Mr Beecroft, yes, please come up to the microphone and introduce yourself to the meeting, please, and ask your question. Zzz. I just don't think the microphone's on at the moment. There's just a button on there, George. If you're on, yep.
George Beecroft, 9 Civic Gardens, Cannington.
Thank you.
Thank you. Before I go, I've got 2 questions, Mr Mayor. Before I do that, thank you, Councillor Jacobs, for letting me in this evening. The doors wouldn't open. I thought I'd got the wrong night. Nearly went home.
We thought we'd locked you out, and I can't believe you got in. But anyway, keep going, Mr Beecroft.
Sorry, I missed that.
That was a joke. It's okay.
First question, Mr Mayor. The memorial to Dr Leakius, the Riverton Leisureplex, what stage are we at with this?
I just asked for Dr McQuaid to answer that question, Director.
Thank you. Through you, Mr Mayor. Thanks for the question, Mr Beecroft. We are working through contact with the family for the mural, and we are now working through purchasing of signage as to basically implement the change of name.
Thank you. Mr Beecroft?
Thank you for that. Could I just make a suggestion on this point? As you approach the Leisureplex from the Fremantle area direction, there is quite a large cream plastered wall, and as you approach from the eastern side, there's a similar sort of thing. This would make a wonderful signage to say the Mick Leakius Leisureplex Centre. The signage at the moment for the Leisureplex is absolutely nothing. It's just you could hardly read it as you go by, and it would be wonderful to see this in something, you know, wall art or colouring or something like that on this. It would really enhance the place.
Yeah, noted. I think at the moment the discussions around signages to do something special around the entry to the Leisureplex, and without completely renaming it. So the Leisureplex will still be the Riverton Leisureplex, Mick Centre, as a byline on that. And so you would be surprised the cost of actually putting large laser cut signage on 2 walls would be an extraordinary cost. But we will certainly take that under advisement, and your suggestion tonight is noted, Mr Beecroft, for sure.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Just a suggestion.
My pleasure.
Second question, Mr Mayor, is will the council consider reviewing the parking requirements for new development proposals?
Can I
Mr
start?
Mayor, reading in the Examiner newspaper, there was a proposal in there that the city construct a multi-storey car park in the city centre. Now, this is only brought, the need for this is only brought about because of the parking requirements, I believe, placed on the multi-storey and other developments in the city. You've only got to go 200 metres from here. There's a 3-storey complex. Each one of these units was only required to have 0.7 of a parking space. Now, next door to these units, there's a big vacant block. Nearly all the time, this vacant block is full of cars that belong to these units. It's totally inadequate. In the city centre, you've got 3 shops underneath a high-rise building. These 3 shops have 2 parking spaces. Heaven only knows if they ever get let and somebody goes in there, heaven knows where people are going to park.
Okay.
If you go into one of our small industrial areas around the city, some of the small industrial workshops there who employ 2 people are required to have 9 parking places. Now, the only people benefiting from the present planning permissions are the property developers, the people who are putting in more and more units and doing away with getting let off with substandard parking areas.
Let me
Years ago, when the council, the County City Council, every unit was required to have a parking spot, and there was also, they were required to have parking spots for visitors. Now, I think we've got to go back to this because why should the City of Canning residents pay for a multi-storey car park?
Yeah, I'll just get you to stop there. I'll get an answer for you from Director Bride, but just to back up the truck just a little bit, we haven't proposed that a multi-storey car park be built. We've simply asked for a feasibility study. If the feasibility study will come back to council, and then we'll discuss it at that time. So there's been no proposal other than a request for a feasibility study. I take your point in relation to parking. The state government has obviously plans to create much greater density in inner Perth suburbs, and we're feeling that across the city of Canning, and that has a knock-on effect in relation to parking. We're feeling that, so we're working as hard as we can with the parameters that have been set by us, with planning and also with the state government. We're doing our best, but I'll just wanted to clear up the bit about the parking. Director Bride.
Yeah, thank you, Mr Mayor. In terms of residential parking, you're right, the standards have changed over time, but they're in the residential design codes, so they're the codes that the state government has issued. So when it comes to apartments, whether it's high-rise, group dwellings, multiple dwellings, those particular car parking standards are set by the state, and where the development is positioned close to train stations or high-frequency bus routes, for example, the rate of visitor parking comes down commensurate with the location of where it is. So the state government is trying to reduce the need for parking, because that does take away from, I guess, the appearance and amenity of the development. But certainly the residential R codes dictate and determine what the car parking standards are, and they do change over time. In terms of the city centre, where you've got a mix of land uses like you do in the Cannington City Centre, with different land uses operating at different times, it is not unreasonable, and it's probably considered to be best practice to provide a parking solution or ratio which I guess prompts or tries to get more redevelopment occurring, so the space associated with parking doesn't dominate the development. So that when you get that reciprocal uses in a city centre context, the parking ratios are lower than you would in a single-use type scenario. So I guess that explains the rationale for the parking arrangements at the moment.
So a lot of that, you raise a very good point. It's one that we've struggled with ourselves, but we're governed by state government policy and also around the R codes. We can't require anything greater than what is required under those R codes. So we do what we possibly can, but yeah, it is a problem, Mr. Beecroft, for sure. You raised a good point.
If the state government wants this through the ARCOs, Mr Mayor, ask them to pay for the multi-storey car park.
We might go to them and ask them to help if we get to that point. Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
No, good. Thanks for coming down tonight. Are there any further questions from the public gallery before I close? Thank you, everyone. I'll close public question time now at 6:22 p.m. We'll move on to the next item, which will actually be confirmation of minutes. Ordinary council meeting held on the 18th of October 2022. The officer's recommendation is that the minutes be taken as read and confirmed, and the recommendation is on page 2 of the agenda and is also on screen. Can I have a mover for that matter, please? Thank you, Councillor Bain, and a seconder. Seconder, Councillor Jacobs, thank you. We'll put that matter to the vote if no one wishes to speak against it. Thank you. We'll put the matter to the vote. Governance, how do we go there? Have we got, do they all register? That's all right. We might try that again. I can't hear you. Okay. We'll just try one more time. We're just having some technical difficulties. Not working. We'll have a show of hands, councillors. All in favour? Thank you. The matter has been passed unanimously, 10 in favour, none against. We'll move on to section 8 of tonight's agenda, which is receiving of petitions, presentations and deputations. At item 8.1, petitions, there are none. At item 8.2, presentations, we have got a presentation to make tonight, and I understand Councillor Hardeep Singh's been asked to make that or has sought permission to make the presentation tonight. Permission granted. Councillor Singh, I'll hand over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, I'm pleased to present to you this evening a National Government Award for our Hillview Intercultural Community Centre that was recently announced by the Australian Government, Department of Infrastructure, Transport, Regional Development, Communications and the Arts. I've got the award here with me. I'll show it to everyone. Anyone interested?
Fantastic. Thank you.
And the big certificate as well. Just right here. We'll hang it somewhere on the wall where it's appropriate. Mr. Mayor, the Hillview Intercultural Community Centre was announced as the winner of the Cohesive Communities Award of the 2022 National Awards for the Local Government on the 13th of October 2022. And we should be very proud of our facility, of our service, and our team. We were one of the 11 category winners from across the entire national local government sector. What a fabulous achievement. This category recognizes local government projects that drive a more inclusive approach to the design programs and partnership, foster a sense of belonging, identity, and shared values, and celebrates the cultural, linguistic, and religious diversity of the community and fosters an inclusive and respectful community. The Hillview Intercultural Community Center is the first dedicated intercultural center in the Southeast Corridor, and it embodies the city's vision for an inclusive community hub that facilitates connections and learning and celebrates diversity. I would like to thank all the staff involved, our grant funders, Australian Government's Local Roads and Community Infrastructure Program, the State Government of Western Australia, Lottery West, and RACWA, an anchor tenant, Multicultural Futures, for all their contributions to Hillview Intercultural Community Center. I would also like to thank and acknowledge Council for supporting the facility upgrade and for its ongoing support of the service and the programs. They are much needed in our community. Thank you very much.
Thank you, and congratulations, everyone, especially to our staff. Sarah Janali is here, Dr. McQuaid obviously is here, and also to Council that adopted the vision brought to us by our staff and stumped up the funding for such a meaningful asset for this city that will actually be an asset to this community for generations. It's just a wonderful, wonderful thing. And also, I don't think I need to mention that these don't happen every day, that a local government is awarded a national award. So it's a very prestigious award, notwithstanding that Sarah Janali, I believe, received one 5 years ago in the same category whilst working at the City of Stirling. So quality people bring quality results to quality councils, and we're pleased to have you for the short time that you're still with us, Sarah, and congratulations to one and all. Thank you very much, Councillor Singh. Yeah, well done. And thank you to everybody that came along tonight to witness that. Well done, thank you. 8.3, deputations. There are none this evening. Applications for leave of absence. I haven't received any, so I think there are none at item 9. Questions by members which notice has been given. There are none this evening. And items brought forward for the convenience of those in the public gallery. There are none. And I bid farewell and good night. Thank you. Thanks for coming. We move to item 12, which are reports of committee meetings. Report of CEO Performance Review Committee held on the 2nd of November 2022. The CEO, Michael Littleton, has declared an interest in this matter. It's a financial interest. He is leaving the room and hopefully he will shut the door behind him. If he's not shutting the door, I think that means he's heading off into the executive area. Hitesh, has he, the CEO, left? Can you just confirm to me that he's headed off into the... Has he gone? You won't be able to shut that one. That one's not working at the moment. The other one you can shut. The door that's open on the right, you can close that one. Thank you. Mr. Littleton has left the room for the purpose of the meeting. That's okay. The recommendation, councillors, is on page 4 of tonight's agenda, and the recommendation is on screen. Can I have a mover for that item, please? Deputy Mayor Ben Kunza. Thank you, Deputy Mayor. And a seconder, Councillor Spencer Teo. Thank you, Councillor Spencer Teo. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor Hall. Look, I support the recommendation. Look, CEO Littleton has proven himself to be a great leader over the last 6 months while he's been here. He's met all his probationary KPIs. And personally, I think he's been a really good listener and good leader. And I think he'll do really well working with council to develop to further continue our vision and do good things in the City of Canning. And I really hope that council supports us unanimously because, yeah, I think Michael's done everything he can to show that he'll be a great CEO, and he has been a good CEO for the last 6 months.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Councillor Spencer Teo, have you anything you'd like to add?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I echo the sentiments of the Deputy Mayor and would like to welcome Michael for at least the long term for now. So looking forward to working with him as we continue our relationship. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll speak. I think it'd be remiss of me as a mayor not to. I support the recommendation of the officers here or the committee, and as being one of the committee members, I'd like to thank the committee for their work done behind the scenes to get us thus far. and their deliberations on the matter, and to all councillors for obviously supporting the work of the committee and reading tonight's recommendation and report. I too echo the sentiments raised by the Deputy Mayor and also Councillor Spencer Teo. I work very closely with Mr Littleton. This is his first posting as a CEO after a long and distinguished career in local government as a senior executive, and I've been immensely impressed by his performance so far, and he has certainly achieved all of his probationary KPIs, and I look forward to his vision if Council supports this matter tonight, and I certainly hope that we do, because that would be the sort of confidence our community needs in this appointment. It's an important one for us as a leader of our organisation. There is no more important or pivotal appointment, and so I hope this can be unanimously supported. And I note, of course, that an absolute majority is required for this item. Does anyone wish to speak on the matter before we put it to the vote? Thanks, councillors. We'll put the matter to the vote. Governance, we'll have another go.
The motion to receive the officer's recommendation for the report of the CEO Performance Review Committee has been carried unanimously with all 10 in favour.
Thank you, councillors. Are we able to have that up on the screen as well, or is that a bridge too far at the moment? Perfect. That is great. Thank you. Does that reflect what you just called, though? So can I just ask governance, what you're actually seeing on, what I'm seeing on screen is not reflective of a unanimous vote, but I think that might be different to what's on the table on the right-hand side. Is that right? I'll just get you to speak into your microphone so I can hear you, sorry. Is that right? So the on the right-hand side of the screen, I can see the unanimous voting. Are they yeses in the column?
Yes, there are 10 yeses in the column, but for some reason it's not reflecting on the left side appropriately.
Okay, thank you, councillors. Councillors, can I ask, did anybody vote against that matter, just for the record? None. I'll go with the governance call, which is unanimous, 10 in favour. So the absolute majority has been required. Unless we fix that issue, we won't put those votes back up on the screen again. We'll just rely on governance to reconcile those and speak to the report. Thank you. We'll move on to the next item, which is item 13, reports of the Office of the CEO this evening, and there are none. I'll ask the CEO to come back. Dion, thank you very much. Thank you, CEO. For the purpose of the recording, the CEO is now rejoining the meeting. We move on to item 13.2, the responsible officer being Miss Keely Haywood, the Acting Director of Canning Corporate and Commercial. It's CC 045 of 22, the monthly financial report for October 2022. The officer's recommendation is going to be on screen in just a moment. Can I get that put on screen, Leanne, if that's possible? It certainly appears on, the recommendation is on page 7 of tonight's agenda. Can I have a mover for that item, please, councillors? Councillor Bain, thank you, Councillor Bain. A seconder? Seconder? Councillor Jacobs, thank you. Councillor Bain.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I support the officer's recommendation. I do have one question, if I may.
Go ahead, Councillor Bain.
Just in regard to the Kent Street Weir plan, when does the city anticipate that the Aboriginal Cultural Heritage Management Plan will be delivered? Thank you.
Director Bowe, is that a question I can put to you?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'll need to take that question on notice and provide a response to Councillor Bain and the elected members.
We'll take that on. We'll get a response to you shortly. Thank you, Councillor Bain. Councillor Jacobs, you got anything further you'd like to add?
I have nothing further to add, thank you.
Okay, anyone else? Thank you. We'll put the matter to the vote. I'll have to get you to speak to your microphone. I can't hear a word you're saying.
It's still not reflecting on the left side, but on the right side, I can see that it has been carried unanimously with all 10 in favour.
Thank you. Councillors, we're having some difficulties tonight with the technology. So what I'm going to ask, if anybody challenges the outcome of the vote, please put your hand up and do so. I'm going to take the call of governance as being correct, unless somebody tells me that it's not. So the matter has been carried unanimously. That's in relation to CC 045 of 22. Thank you, governance. And we'll move on to the next matter, which is CC 046 of 22, the review of financial policies. The recommendation at the moment is on page 42 of the agenda. Deputy Mayor, I understand you have an alternate recommendation, alternate motion you'd like to put?
Yes, I do. Is it on the screen?
Leanne, do you have that there? Can I get you to put that up on the screen? Deputy Mayor, I'll just ask you to read that and just confirm that that is the alternate motion you'd like to put.
Yes, that's correct.
Can I get a seconder, please, for the alternate motion? Seconder, Councillor Spencer-Teo. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor Hall. Look, I'll just speak. I agree with everything within the motions and everything that's within the officer recommendation, except for the two aspects that I've amended with this alternative motion. So with FM12, I've included subject to the removal of the words or imply from clause 6.2b sponsorship requirements. So basically the effect of that or imply in my mind adds ambiguity. So the point is to that the city won't give explicit endorsement of a company, etc., in return for sponsorship, but then the additional words or imply is rather subjective. So to imply endorsement, I don't know why that needs to be in there, because whether endorsement is applied is up to each individual. So I don't think that that should be as part of that clause. And then with AF 306 investments, I believe that clause 9, supporting sustainable energy, should be removed, because the name is supporting sustainable energy, but I don't think it necessarily really accurately reflects the intent or what the clause does. Which is to avoid financial institutions which lend to oil, coal and gas projects when the rates are comparable. So it was confirmed to me that because of this clause, the city will even preference financial institutions that don't invest in fossil fuels, even if that financial institution doesn't invest in renewable energy. So I don't actually understand why it's called supporting sustainable energy. Look, I'm not in local government to debate energy policy, so I don't intend to get into a bit of monologue about this. But like it or not, Australia is one of the biggest gas and coal exporters in the world. Australia and West Australia in particular, our economy is based on the resource sector. And I said this in 2017, and I'll say it again. Why would we want to tell financial institutions not to lend to the very industries that our economy is built on? I recognise that the clause will only come into play when deposit rates of the two financial institutions are comparable, meaning it is basically tokenism, and we only stand up when it doesn't cost us. But if all the organisations and companies did the same thing, that is tell financial institutions not to lend money to these companies and projects, the money will disappear and inevitably the industries that Australia depends on disappear. It's simply not logical when Australia has no other replacement areas, industries for our economy, and we need the gas to turn the lights on. So thousands of ratepayers work for companies like Rio, Shell, Chevron, either directly or indirectly support them. We don't mind accepting the rates income that are funded by these institutions through ratepayers and salaries and investments, but we want to tell the banks not to support these businesses. I'd rather, as a local government, that we focus on what we can do as a local government, and that's invest in renewable energy by installing solar panels on our facilities that we've been doing for years to reduce our carbon footprint, investing properly into our urban forest strategy. It's not lost on me that since we first put this clause in 2017 into the investment policy, that we have underinvested in our urban forest strategy. So a mature tree can apparently sequester 12.5 tonnes of carbon whilst providing shade and important habitat for fauna, isn't that something that we should be focusing on and putting our resources into? So I'd prefer that we focus on real action, and that's to help our local environment before tokenism and investing ratepayers' money into things like carbon credits. If we have spare money, it should be investing into more trees, given how far back we are in this space. So I'm all into renewable energy and reducing our carbon footprint, but I could have let this through to the keeper. But from a pure philosophical point of view, I don't know why we would support a clause that advocates to limit funding to the industries that Australia relies on. Thanks.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Councillor Spencer-Teo.
I have no issue with the alternate motion, and I support it, but I was just wondering if would this be a good opportunity for me to amend item 4 with the mover's permission? Is item 4? Yeah, just to defer policy FM10.
Can I just ask, what are you proposing?
So what I'm
You're
proposing...
proposing an amendment.
Yes.
And what would be the amendment? Have we got the amendment there?
So it would be create a new item at 5, should be defers, not refers, shouldn't it?
So, Councillor Spencer-Teo, I'll just ask you to wait a moment just while Leanne gets it up on the screen.
Should just say defers, not refers.
Can I just ask Councillor Spencer-Teo as well, what is on the screen at the moment, the amendment that you're proposing?
Just the first word should be defers. Yeah. Yes.
Is that what it is?
It is, yes.
You'll need a seconder for your amendment. Do we have a seconder for the amendment? Deputy Mayor is the seconder for the amendment. Councillor Spencer-Teo, I'll ask you to speak to your amendment, but only to speak to the amendment.
Yep. So in June of this year, I presented a NOM 00622 that Council unanimously endorsed to review the tenancy suite of documents and to review them together. This was obviously for a reason, and that was because these two policies are intertwined and they relate. I also asked in that NOM for a workshop by December to go through the draft policies, and all we had was a SIB where we were told the outstanding tenancy issues and tenancy documents, and we were not presented with any draft policies. Therefore, I'm still expecting a workshop with the draft policy BR01, and if this is the draft FM10, that's fine. But I'd just like them to come together because I can't endorse a policy that relates to another one that's not yet been reviewed. So that's pretty much my rationale for deferring it.
Deputy Mayor, did you wish to speak on the amendment?
I think Councillor Spencer-Teo's last sentence nailed it on the head. They should be revised together, and I support deferring it.
Does anyone else wish to speak either for or against the amendment? Councillor Sabiri?
Okay, I'm going to speak against removing Clause 9, supporting sustainable energy. I feel removing this, and while we're trying to do other stuff like urban forest, or, it's sort of basically, it's sort of, this was brought in 2017 council, so,
I'll just,
We-
can I just stop you there?
Yeah.
We're only debating just the amendment. The amendment is just a deferral, so it's not
are we
the,
just talking about that, or we didn't vote on?
we're just talking about the
We
amendment,
are-
so we're only
we are
debating the
talking about
amendment?
amendments. There's 3 amendments that we moved, I'm talking about one of them.
No, I don't believe we are. So the amendment is only that we refer policy FM10 rating waivers for community groups until April 2023.
Sorry, did we, what are the 3
So the
red
other,
ones?
the other one, the alternate motion put by the Deputy Mayor, we're not discussing that at the moment. So that was put and seconded. And then we've had Councillor Spencer Teo has put an amendment to that, and we're only debating the amendment that she put to the amendment. We'll come back to the substantive motion in a moment, but at the moment we're only talking about the amendment.
Okay.
I'll certainly come back to you. Councillor Sweeney, you had your hand up?
Yeah, I'm a little bit confused. I want to speak, I just want to ask a question in regards to the Deputy Mayor's amendment. Is this the right time for that?
But we're only talking about just the amendment at the moment,
Yeah.
proposed by Councillor Spencer Teo. So
Oh, okay.
once
So-
this actually, once we finish the debate on this amendment at the moment, which is only to defer those 2 items to a point in time until 2023, once that has been dealt with and the other amendment, minor amendment in part 6 of that, then we'll go back to the substantive motion if it is adopted, and then we'll all get an opportunity to debate the substantive motion, which will be the matter raised by Councillor Sabiri and also yourself. Excuse me just for one moment. Thank you. Councillor Sabiri.
I also, if this is where we're moving on amendments, I also proposed another amendment.
So
Part
under the
G.
standing orders, we can only deal with amendments one at a time. So once this amendment is actually completed, you can then introduce a second amendment, but we have to deal with the amendments in order and one at a time. So we deal with this amendment, and then if that's adopted as the substantive motion, then you can put another amendment, and then others can put other amendments. We're going to have 100 amendments tonight, but they must be dealt with one at a time under the standing orders.
Don't we usually vote once there's an amendment made? I'm a bit confused, I
Yeah, we
felt
do, but we
should
haven't-
really be voting once Deputy Mayor put his.
The Deputy Mayor hasn't made an amendment, he's put an alternate motion. So instead of the officer's recommendation, before the officer's recommendation was moved and seconded, the Deputy Mayor has put an alternative, different recommendation to council. And that's been moved by him, seconded by Councillor Spencer Teo, and we started to debate that, and then we've immediately had an amendment put to it, so now we're dealing with the amendment. So just to clarify, councillors, the officer's recommendation that you have in your agenda has not been put tonight. We have an alternate recommendation put by the Deputy Mayor. So it's not an amendment, it's an alternate recommendation, as we've done in this chamber many times before. So we'll come back to that in a moment, but right now, the order of business we have is that we're discussing the amendment put by Councillor Spencer Teo, which is on screen at the moment. So the Deputy Mayor has spoken to it, Councillor Spencer Teo has spoken to it. Are there any questions in relation to this amendment before we put the amendment? Councillor Jacobs, yes.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Number 5, you may have said it, but I might have been reading some stuff. FM10 rating waivers for community groups, what's your logic for delaying it?
Councillor Spencer Teo went into song and verse about that.
Yeah,
and
I just want to know.
explained it
I
totally.
just want to know that.
You need to be concentrating
I
on
know.
this meeting,
I'm sorry,
councillor.
but I just wanted to. I'm a bit confused by the whole thing. It's been,
For the sake of getting the meeting moving, I'm going to ask you to clarify again.
Thank you.
But please tune in. That answer has been given. Councillor Spencer Teo in brief.
Because my notice of motion asked for those 2 policies to be reviewed together. This separates them. All I'm asking is for them to be reviewed together. BR01 hasn't been reviewed yet. It's due to be reviewed in April 2023, and I would like FM10 to be presented to us in draft format together with BR01.
And that's a previous resolution of council?
Correct.
Okay, so that was a previous resolution of council. They both be dealt with at the same time. They haven't been. Councillor Spencer Teo's point is that they've been separated out. She's just asking for the resolution of council to be adhered to. That's it. Any further questions on That matter? Yes, councillor Jacobs.
So if we don't do the amendment, and this may be for executive to answer, is there any effect? I just want to know, if we go this way, what's the effect? If we go that way, what's the effect?
CEO, can I get you to perhaps deal with that?
Obviously, if the amendment succeeds, the matter will be deferred, and both FM10 and BR01 will be brought to council in April next year. If the amendment doesn't succeed, FM10 will be adopted as proposed in the attachments tonight, and on that basis, we wouldn't necessarily bring it back to council in April 2023 in conjunction with BR01.
Thank you. Councillor Jacobs?
Yeah, I understand that, but how does it affect the community groups? I just want to know exactly how it affects them.
CEO.
Sorry, Mr Mayor. Look, the current policy will prevail until such time as it's amended, so there will be no change from the current policy.
So the current policy just stays in play, and until that time it just carries on. Anyone else before we put the matter to the vote? We'll put the matter to the vote. There's been no debate against it. Thank you. Thank you, Governance. Thank you, Governance.
The motion has been carried unanimously with all 10 in favour.
Okay, thank you. The matter has been carried. Councillor Sabiri? You voted against it? Well, I asked for Councillor Sabiri has done exactly what I asked only 10 minutes ago, that if anybody had a challenge on it. Did everybody else? I'll have a show of hands. Can we have a show of hands? All in favour to the amendment? Okay, that's 9 in favour, 1 against, with Councillor Sabiri against. Governance, I'll get you to just make that amendment, please. So it's 9 in favour, 1 against, Councillor Sabiri voting against. The amendment then becomes part of the substantive motion. We go back to the substantive motion. Leanne, what I'll get you to do is to actually accept those changes. They now become part of the substantive motion. So I'll get the CEO to come down and assist you with that. And councillors, I'll just ask for your indulgence tonight and also your patience. We've had a number of members of the governance team ill and unable to be here tonight, and we are doing the very best we can. Councillor Singh.
Mr. Mayor, regarding point 5 on the screen, I believe there is no need for the red text which is crossed out. It can be just removed from that, make it much more readable.
That'll all be accepted as a change. That will all come out, yes. Yep. Councillors, we have the substantive motion as it stands currently on screen. I am just reading it myself, and I feel that that is reflective of the change that has just been made and the amendment that has just been adopted by Council. So we move on. We have Councillor, Deputy Mayor has spoken. Councillor Sabiri, you'd like to make an amendment?
Yes. Can you
I
please
think I
bring
have it
up on
here.
screen?
I think I have it here.
Do your job. I worked with the officers to reward it, so I'm expecting it'll come up, so.
Councillor Sabiri, I'll just get you to read that and make sure you're happy with it. I think it's substantially just in relation to part 4 of the recommendation, is that right?
Yep, I'm happy with that.
You're happy with that? So I'll just call for a seconder. So you've moved your amendment. That's moved by Councillor Sabiri, and a seconder for the amendment. That'll be Councillor Bain has seconded. Councillor Sabiri, I'll get you to speak to your amendment, but only to speak to just your amendment, what you're amending. Thank you. Go ahead.
Sure.
And Governors, can I get you to run the clock, please?
It won't be that long.
That's all right. We never know. Could be. Tonight could be the night.
Thank you. Look, any investment in new fossil fuels is basically a stranded asset. It doesn't make any sense to have ratepayers' money caught up in a bank exposed to that risk. And as it increases, the risk of financial losses for the city increase. So in addition, investment in fossil fuels have overwhelming negative impacts from both the public health and infrastructure management. In recent years, we've seen heat waves, increased frequency of floods. So in general, what I'm asking here isn't, I'm not even saying let's not invest in fossil fuels. I'm saying let's see what we're investing in fossil fuels and what we're not investing in fossil fuels. And this is already, I asked Keely earlier and she said that it's easily done. It's, and I just didn't get here on time to see the report that she pulled out in a few minutes. So it's something that's easily done, and it'd be good to see where we are and where we're going. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Bain.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. No, I seconded the motion to enable Councillor Sabiri to put some information behind and explain the amendment, and I look forward to listening to further debate before I make up my mind. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. You're not speaking for or against the matter?
Not at this moment, no. Thank you.
There won't be another moment. You've had your moment. Thank you, Councillor Bain.
Yep.
Councillor Jacobs, you'd like to speak?
Question tonight for Councillor Jacobs tonight. 4G, I don't quite understand the intent. So investment of funds in non-fossil fuel lending or authorised deposit-taking institution as a percentage of total funds. So is it just saying, okay, find it, is it 5%, is it 6%, and just telling us? Or are we saying, oh, we have to meet a pre-agreed percentage?
You'd have to read that in context with the other parts in clause 12, I think.
I think it's the first one. I just want to double check. It's just, we're just going to tell them what it is, right?
CEO, have you got... Ms Haywood, thank you.
Thank you, through you, Mr Mayor. Yes, the report simply says percentages, so what's the percentage split of our investments into fossil fuel or non-fossil fuel?
Anyone else? Councillor Spencer-Teo, and then I'll go to Councillor Sweeney.
Sorry, just to clarify, this is point 12 of the policy is reporting. So this just means that we will, in the report, we will see a breakdown of what percentage has been invested. It's not actually, we're not being asked to invest. You're just going to show us what we have invested, correct?
Ms Haywood's nodding her head furiously in the affirmative. Is
Yes,
that right?
thank you, through you, Mr Mayor. Yes, that's right.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Sweeney.
Yeah, just a question, so for clarification again, like a couple of other councillors, and I'd like to hear from the CEO if you could answer this one. Just from his point of view, what are the investment impacts here of this amendment in terms of, does this significantly disadvantage the city's ability to diversify our investments? How is this going to impact on our investments?
I think we're just asking simply the way we're reporting. I'll get the CEO to explain that, but we're not actually doing anything other than when we report on this, we'll show where the investment is made. It won't change the investment. CEO.
I can only say that's a great summary. That's exactly what this will do. It'll just create more visibility over, over the investment in fossil fuels. So it won't change our investment profile at all.
Thank you. Look, I'll say a few words. I speak in support of it, Councillor Sabiri. I think it's a fine amendment and provides some visibility over where we're actually spending our money and how we're spending our money, and I think our community would expect that of us. So I'll support the amendment because it's doing nothing other than simply showing us exactly where our investment profile is, and I think that's a good thing. Anyone else wish to speak for or against? Councillor Spencer-Teo.
Just to say that I too support the amendment. Thanks.
Thank you. Anyone else before we put the matter to the vote? Thank you. We'll put the amendment to the vote then, councillors. Councillor Spencer-Teo, Councillor Sabiri, no one's spoken against the matter, so we'll put it straight to the vote. Thank you. What we might do, we'll do a show of hands. I think that'd be the path of least resistance and take some pressure off our hard-working governance staff. All in favour, please raise your hand. That is unanimous for the sake of the record. 10 in favour, none against. The amendment is passed and now becomes part of the substantive motion. Leanne, I'll just get you to catch up, so you should be able to simply make all of that black, and I think we then have our substantive motion. But the CEO is heading away as he ducks under the screen and doesn't lose an eye. We'll just get that sorted. Thank you, councillors. We're going to return now to the original substantive motion, which has been moved by the Deputy Mayor and seconded by Councillor Spencer-Teo. and then it has been amended, and that amendment adopted by Council by Councillor Spencer Teo, and amended a second time, and that amendment unanimously accepted by Council, and that was made by Councillor Sabiri. So now we go back to the substantive motion, which is now on screen. I encourage you all to read it, but there should be no variation other than what we just looked at just a moment ago. I will open up debate on the matter. The Deputy Mayor has already spoken to the alternate motion. Councillor Spencer Teo, I will take it that you've already spoken on the matter. I'll invite anyone else to speak, either for or against the matter, and then we will put it to the vote. Does anyone else wish to speak before we put the matter to the vote? Councillor Sabiri.
Yep, so I thank you for giving me the opportunity. I won't
like
be
to-
able to support this because we can't go and say, oh yeah, we support, basically because we took clause 9 out, in one sense say, yes, we want more greenery, let's have solar panels, and but, you know, we have to put our money where our mouth is. It just doesn't make sense when all councils are going forward. They're finding a way to be more sustainable. We take that clause that came in, in 2017, take it out and say, no, we don't believe in, we don't want to invest in sustainable energy because that means that banks will have to invest more in renewables. Because so if we invest, the basic argument is if we invest in banks that invest in renewable energy, therefore there are more funds that will be able to give into those projects. So that's where our monies are going. So to make it really basic, so if we've got super funds, if we invest in funds that put our monies into renewables, it means that those companies with more renewable portfolio will be able to have more projects. Whereas if we invest in banks or funds that invest in fossil fuels, it obviously means that less money is going to go to renewable energy. So we can't say, oh yeah, it's great, let's have solar panel on roofs, and then go, but let's fund banks that, let's put our monies where that fund fossil fuel banks and fossil fuels. So it's quite contradictory. I think we have to be consistent. And again, as I said, investing in fossil fuels is like investing in a stranded asset. So that's my reason for not supporting this. We are, if we think of the planet, and us driving it, it's similar to us driving our cars. We have to be at 350 parts per million. However, we've exceeded 400 something now. It's like drink driving. So it's a similar thing. So why would we keep funding fossil fuels when we know it's crashing the planet? We've seen increase, heat waves. We've seen the frequency of floods increase. Something that was 1 in 100 years is now 1 in 10 years, and even more. So I really am surprised that we would want to invest in non-renewable and instead of supporting renewable energies, renewable industries, go towards supporting, go backwards actually from 2017 and say, no, let's start supporting fossil fuels again. And I think it's just common sense, really. We just, yeah, I can't say more to that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sabiri. Anyone else wish to speak before we put the matter to the vote? Councillor Sweeney.
Thank you. Yeah, so I just have a question
Go ahead.
Separate from sustainability, and this relates to the reserve funds on page 66. And I noticed at the bottom of that page, it says details of the city's reserve funds are now going to be published annually in the budget papers. Does that mean that the monthly reporting of those reserve funds for councillors to track, does that mean it's not going to be included in those monthly financial reports anymore?
Ms Hayward.
Thank you. Through you, Mr Mayor. If I might ask Mr Adewale to confirm that.
Hitesh, can I get you to come forward? Did you hear the question? I'll get you to come forward if you don't mind, and I'll get Councillor Sweeney just to ask the question again. He noted that in the report it talks about the annual report. We'll be reporting the reserve funds, and he wonders how that'll impact on our monthly financials. Councillor Sweeney, can I just get you to quickly ask that question again?
Yes, thank you. Just in return, in terms of the reserve funds, I did notice on the bottom of page 66, it says that the city's reserve funds are published annually in the budget papers. Historically, they've always appeared in our monthly financial statements, so councillors can track those movements of any funds in and out of those portfolios, out of those funds. Is that going to change now? Is this what this is saying, that we're not going to report those on a monthly basis in those financial reports?
Or is it additional to that? Thank you, Hitesh.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So if you're referring to Councillor Sweeney regarding the reference we are making for removing reserve funds from the budget management policy, so that is only referring to removing reference, because truly speaking, any newly created reserve should be part of the budget making process. Hence the reference for all the reserve has been removed from that policy. But in terms of reporting on a monthly basis, you still get investment report with a detailed breakdown of every single reserve as to how much we are investing, including the purchase and sale of investment in each of those reserves, which is guided by our investment policy. So that's why I was trying to get the linkages between your question, if you're referring to removal of reference to the reserve from the budget management policy versus reporting of reserve, which is guided by AF 306 investment policy.
Councillor Sweeney?
Yeah, thank you. Look, yeah, the reason my question is for the fact that, you know, historically administration has had some management issues in relation to these reserve funds. And from an audit and risk perspective, which I am part of,
yep.
I think we still need to see transparency over the reserve funds on a monthly basis in those financial reports. So that's my question, Mr. Mayor, is that are we still seeing that? That's all.
Are we
I'm
still
asking.
having oversight? I think Councillor Sweeney's just saying,
so
is monthly reporting changing?
No, the monthly reporting regarding investment isn't changing at all with this proposal. We will continue to report as part of the investment report, detailed breakdown for all reserves.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sweeney. Thank you, Hitesh. Mr. Adewale, thank you very much. Anyone else wish to speak before I put the matter back to the Deputy Mayor? Councillor Jacobs.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I support the motion. I think it's not our money, it's ratepayers' money. If it was my money, maybe I'd do something else. I'm actually a big supporter of renewable energy. I've got an electric car. I've got big. If it was my own money, it'd be different. But we have to maximise return for our ratepayers. Australia is the biggest gold producer, the biggest lithium producer in the world. 72.9% of all lithium in the world is dug in Australia. Australia is the 7th biggest national gas exporter. I think these energies, such as lithium and natural gas, are actually funding a greener future, cleaner future, and supporting an economic transition that will need to take some time. I think in the end, economics will take care of this as fossil fuels become more and more prohibitively expensive, and I think this is probably more of a realm of the federal government to regulate this area. I think in France, I think the combustion engines are cooked in 2030 or something like that. So I understand both sides of the argument. I think by saying how much we're investing in non-fossil fuels, it's clear for our ratepayers, but I don't want to get drawn on ideological battles. I think at the moment it's not my money, it's the ratepayers' money, and whatever offers the biggest return. Australia is the world's wealthiest country per capita at the moment. I don't think it's any accident. The Asian nations need huge amounts of natural gas and these critical, rare earth minerals to fund the transition. And at the moment, it's fossil fuels that has to do the heavy lifting. So that's my thoughts, Mr. Mayor. I applaud the Deputy Mayor for touching on a rather sensitive subject for our council, but I think you'll find that my arguments today are consistent with the arguments I put in 2017. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll invite the Deputy Mayor, unless Councillor Bain would like to speak. Councillor Bain.
A couple of questions, if I may,
Yeah, go
Mr.
ahead.
Mayor. So is point 3 It's a question to the city. Is that consistent with our sustainability commitments?
Ms. Hayward? Part 3 of the recommendation, I believe, the motion.
Yes, through you, Mr Mayor. Yes, I believe it is. The inclusion of clause 9 originally was simply to give us an opportunity to, where there was a choice to invest in more sustainable projects. So it's not a requirement under our sustainability commitments.
Thank you. Councillor Bain?
So we already have under the existing AF 306 policy supporting sustainable energy, and so that's been in action, so to speak, for the last 5, 6, 7 years, and now all of a sudden we're going to get rid of it completely. Is that correct? If point 3 is successful?
Ms. Kelly, sorry, Ms. Hayward, is that the understanding? Is that what's happened?
Thank you. Through you, Mr Mayor. We have many other commitments around sustainability, not just simply what's proposed to be in this policy.
Thank you. Councillor Bain?
So under the existing policy, we have supporting sustainable energy. Is that correct? For investments?
Ms. Hayward?
Yes, through you, Mr Mayor. Yes, that's correct.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to speak for or against before I ask the Deputy Mayor to close? Councillor Hardeep Singh.
Just a question,
Yes,
Mr.
of
Mayor.
course.
Question for the Director. Clause 9, supporting sustainable energy. Part B, the investment rate of interest is comparable to the city relative to other similar investments.
What paragraph of the
Sorry,
report are you reading? What paragraph
So
number?
clause 9,
Yep.
which is supporting sustainable energy, which is for part 3, which we are part of the substantive motion, which says adopt revised policy AF 306 investment fund subject to removal of clause 9. So I'm referring to clause 9 of policy AF 306. Clause 9 has 2 parts. I'll just read the whole clause 9.
Okay.
To reduce cities' overall carbon footprint and wasteful use of natural resources, preference is to be given to financial institutions that invest in sustainable-oriented funds or related financial products predicated on sustainability performance indices where the investment is compliant with the city's investment policy and the investment rate of interest is comparable. So I'll stop there. That's what I'm trying to understand. So if we have 2 financial institutions, one who supports fossil fuels, another one who supports renewable energy, and both are giving us similar rates, or let's say exact same rates. My understanding is, as per this clause, city will be investing in the institution who is more supportive of non-fossil fuel. The second scenario, I believe that's pretty clear.
I'll just ask for a response to that. That's the question from Councillor.
Yes, that's correct.
That's correct. The answer is yes.
What happens if the investment return from the institution who's supporting renewable energy is less, and the investment return from the institution who's supporting fossil fuels is higher? So if the clause remains as it is, where will the city invest?
Ms. Hayward.
Thank you. Through you, Mr Mayor. So the use of the word comparable is designed to capture those situations where the rates are very close. We still have an overall set of principles which require us to consider the most favourable rate to the city overall. However, where the rates are close, considered comparable, then this opens the opportunity for us to invest in more sustainable investments.
Thank you. Councillor Singh.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Comparable is very
subjective.
It's subjective. I mean, when we are talking $100 million versus $100, a rate of 4.1% and 4.2%, it can make a huge difference. So if any further explanation can be given, how much difference are we talking? Are we putting in, okay, if it is within 0.5%, the preference should be here. Can we be more clear? It will assist us in making this decision whether to remove clause 9 or not to.
Ms. Hayward.
Through you, Mr Mayor, thank you. As you'll see from the policy, there isn't a quantified amount there, but a very small fraction of a percentage would be considered comparable.
It's a subjective term anyway. Comparable is comparable. Comparable means it's not exact. It's not completely measurable, but it's comparable. And I guess we have to just accept that there will be a judgment call. We, as a council, have made our intent very clear that where we're able to, we will choose sustainable investments where we are able to. So I would hope that my expectation, and I think that's the expectation of council, and certainly the intent of the policy, is that when the opportunity arises, that if it's a line ball decision, that the city would make the decision to invest in line with the sentiment expressed by this council. So I think that would be, and the questions you've asked and that have been accepted and answered on the public record would give us some comfort that that is what's going to happen, I think. Councillor Singh?
Mr. Mayor, may I please move an amendment to the substantive motion?
You certainly can. What would be the amendment?
I'm looking to change the clause 9, the investment rate of interest, instead of word comparable, to be same. So it's easy. To be same, so that it's easy for the investment to make a decision. If the both rate of interest are 4%, then the preference should be renewables. However, I would need some guidance from governance that how would that amendment fits in this substantive motion.
So, so the advice I'm receiving here is that would be need to be a foreshadowed alternate motion because it's contrary to the intent of the motion that you have in front of us. It's not an amendment. You're completely flipping it. So that's not an amendment. That actually has to be a foreshadowed alternate motion. You can actually put that as such. But I'd caution you, as the Mayor, these things when they're done, all of the amendments tonight have actually been worked through by the councillors with members of staff before they came here tonight. So we're not making ad hoc decisions around things we really don't understand the impact of. So a simple change like that can have a significant effect. But that would have to be my ruling, that it's not an amendment because it's completely contrary to the intent of the current substantive motion. So did you want to put that as a... First of all, there's two things you can do. You can ask staff what would the implication of that. You could pose that to the CEO. Secondly, we could actually put that as a foreshadowed alternate motion, which would mean that if this is not supported by council at the moment, that would show you that there's actually an appetite for your foreshadowed motion. Then we would move to the foreshadowed motion.
Mr. Mayor, I would like to ask one more question before I make the decision.
Go ahead.
Question to the director. In case clause 9 is removed and the substantive motion in front of us is accepted, what differences makes towards investment in non-fossil fuel supportive institution versus fossil fuel? Will they be treated equally? Will any preference given to anything? How does that changes our investment preference?
Ms Hayward?
Thank you. Through you, Mr Mayor. So if I may, and if I understand your question, if clause 9 is not part of the policy, then it wouldn't be a factor in the consideration of the investment decision. We would go back to the principles which are included in the front of the policy document.
Follow-up question, Mr. Mayor.
I just have to make this your final question. So, Councillor Singh, we've had an AB last week. We had a full meeting where the opportunity to ask these questions was presented, and we've had a whole week since there where you could have asked these follow-up questions and you haven't. Tonight's a decision-making forum. I'd really like us to get to that point. So, can you please try to make this your last question? I think that's about 8 questions on the trot.
I will make it last question,
Thank
Mr.
you.
Mayor. However, this alternative motion or the substantive motion in front of us wasn't there at the AB. That's why all these questions, Mr. Mayor.
Nice retort. I accept that. Let's move on.
I'm trying to remember my question now. So, if the substantive motion is accepted, there is no clause 9, and 2 investment opportunities comes in front of city. One to invest in a financial institution supportive of fossil fuels, another one not supportive, exactly same rate of return. What will be city supporting?
Ms Hayward. CEO, I might get you to answer that. I think you're calling for us to answer a hypothetical question that we're not able to answer at the moment, though I guess it's not hypothetical if we have a policy. You're asking for some direction. CEO, can I get you to probably provide some guidance to council on what your expectation would be? I've outlined what mine would be under the policy, but could I get you to address the question by Councillor Hardeep Singh? And he's given me his assurance it's his last.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Look, I can only say that I think our expectation is we would review the various options, and we would take the very best option that's consistent with a broad suite of policies. So obviously, if the investment opportunities in front of us were exactly the same, then we would take the more sustainable outcome. Again, it's a subjective issue because you know, it is a hypothetical, but you know, we would apply a broad range of thinking and apply the broad policies that council has in place. We have an adopted sustainability framework that we are also working to. So those sorts of things would guide our decision making going forward.
And the technology is changing so quickly. The whole sector is changing so quickly. We need to be agile with this, but I think our intent is really clear. We're trying to be a more sustainable council. That's what we're trying to be. So, Councillor Singh. Okay, Councillor Singh, go on.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would like to speak in favour of the substantive motion.
Go right ahead.
I support removing clause 9. It would have been nice to have some guidance in the policy that the city will prefer renewable energy if the rate of return is similar. The commentary given by CEO gives me the insurance that will be the case. Hence, I will support removing clause 9 and this substantive motion. Rate of return for our residents' money should be paramount. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Singh. And I wasn't being flippant. Thanks for your questions. I appreciate them. Councillor Bone.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. One question, if I may.
Go ahead.
So clause 9 in the proposed policy is very similar to clause 8 in the existing policy. Has there been any issues or impediments or concerns or anything else raised in regards to clause 8 of the existing policy? Has there been, like I said, any concerns or issues surrounding it? Thank you.
Ms Hayward.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor, no, there hasn't.
Simple answer is no. Thank you. Councillors, if there's no one else wishing to speak against the matter, I might ask the Deputy Mayor to close debate or give him the opportunity to do so if he wishes to take me up on that. Deputy Mayor.
Yeah, I do. Just to touch on a couple of points. So my point isn't, like, clause 9 isn't about investing into renewable energy. The clause is about telling financial institutions not to invest into fossil fuels. So that was my point in my initial argument, that this isn't about saying whether we want sustainable energy or we're against it or for it or how much we should invest into it. And that's why I spoke about that I very much support the city investing into solar panels and so forth, increasing our level of tree canopy cover and so forth. I won't go over that again. But the reality is, so under the feedback I was provided, that we consider financial institutions green when they don't invest in fossil fuels, but they don't even have to invest into sustainable energy. So they're green just because they don't invest into fossil fuels. My point is that we shouldn't be supporting a position that advocates to the financial institutions not to invest into the gas project, the Browse, Gorgon, Pluto, the Northwest Shelf. These built WA. Do you know anyone that hasn't worked in FIFO in these industries? If the financial institutions didn't lend, these wouldn't exist. Our state wouldn't be what it is. Rossmoyne used to be the hub of where Chevron workers went. These are our ratepayers, and that's why I don't support this clause. I think our investment policy should focus on getting our investments right and not advocating for those against fossil fuels. So I ask you to support it, and thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. We'll put the matter to the vote. Thank you, councillors. We'll do so by a show of hands. Can I have those in favour first, please? 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. That's 8 in favour. Those voting against will be, I'll get those people to raise their hand, please. Those voting against are Councillor Bain and Councillor Sabiri. The matter has been carried. Thank you, councillors. We now then move on in the agenda to item 13.4, the responsible officer being Director Warren Bowe, the Director of Canning Environment. The matter is EN 027 of 22. The title of that report being Review of Tender 15/2019 in brackets Cat 2 oblique FM.033.232 for the Hossack Pavilion Upgrades and Extension Tender Award. And for those wondering, Hossack Reserve is in the suburb of Parkwood. Officer's recommendation is on screen and is also on page 82 of the agenda. Can I have a mover, please, for that item? Councillor Spencer-Teo, thank you. A seconder for the item? Councillor Parkinson, thank you. Councillor Spencer-Teo?
I support the officer's recommendation and have nothing more to say. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Councillor Parkinson?
I support the officer's recommendation. Nothing further to add.
Thank you. Anyone wish to speak against the matter before we put it to the vote? Thank you, councillors. We'll put the matter to the vote. In fact, we'll do a show of hands. All in favour, please. Thank you. Let the record reflect all in favour. The matter has been passed unanimously, 10 in favour and no one against. We move to EN 028 of 22. The title of this report is Resident Request to Remove 4 Mature Park Trees in Kingfisher Park in Willetton. The officer's recommendation is in front of us. It's on screen. It's also on page 94 of the agenda. Can I have a mover for that matter, please? I've got Councillor Jacobs first, and I have our Deputy Mayor second. Deputy Mayor, you'll be seconding it. Councillor Jacobs, would you like to start us off? Thank you.
Yeah, this is pretty simple. I don't think it's a can-do. I've reviewed it. I like to look on these things as a case-by-case basis. I'm confident that the landowner has moved in 2018 when the trees are there. It's a known, not an unknown, to quote some Donald Rumsfeld. Yeah, so I can't support it. It's in a park. I would say if the landowner doesn't like it, maybe they could sell the property. But it's just, you know, I do look at things if they're on the verge, but this is clearly in the park. I'm sorry. I know that trees sometimes can drop a lot of stuff, but these are not new trees, and I think they've done the pruning as required before, so it's a fairly simple one for me, Mr Mayor, so I won't go on. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Jacobs. Deputy Mayor Kunze.
Yes, Mr Mayor. Look, I support the officer recommendation. The city's well-established philosophical position that we have to do all within our power to retain the number of trees and increase the level of tree canopy cover across the city of Canning. But we as a council, and following voluminous feedback from the community, especially through our strategic community plan, we are charged with the responsibility to see the urban forest strategy realised, and a big part of that is retaining mature trees, the few that we have left. Look, I recognise the position that Dr Lynn has found himself in and his desire for the trees to be removed. However, removing trees is not something I can support. The city continues to prune the trees, as Councillor Jacobs said, ensuring they don't cross the property line, and is taking necessary action to ensure that they're safe through independent arborist investigations. It needs to be recognised, however, that we have only three types of land within the city where trees are planted, being freehold, public open space, which is parks and reserves, and then the streetscapes or road reserves. Look, as we know, as Perth and Canning densifies, the number of trees on freehold land is decreasing every day. This is exactly why the city, through its urban forest strategy, has set aggressive targets for both our streetscapes and our public open space. In fact, our council endorsed the urban forest strategy, investing millions of dollars into and has a target to increase the level of tree canopy cover in our parks and reserves from 17.6% to 40%. Now, you don't get there by removing trees that are over 40 years old because they drop leaves and block the sunlight. Now, Willetton currently has around 23% of tree canopy cover in its public open space, meaning we almost have to double it. And we have limited opportunities because a lot of that is sporting reserves. We need to plant around the edges of our sporting reserves and in our parks. So most of the Swan Coastal Plain has been cleared. There's very limited mature vegetation left, and what's available is fragmented. I often hear naive comments that we can simply remove mature trees and replace them with 2-for-1 somewhere else, but that should always be a last resort. It takes many, many, many years for vegetation to mature and fruit, providing foraging habitat for animals. It takes even longer for nesting hollows to be available. Look, the nesting hollows, these trees are 40 to 50 years old. Nesting hollows for most birds and black cockatoos have to be 80, 90, 100 years old. There are fewer and fewer old trees, and that's exactly why we need to protect what we have. And it's really depressing to go across some of the suburbs and see what used to be there and what's there now with very few trees. Now, Council has an agreed policy and a clear strategy that we're committed into investing to, and we need to show our commitment to our agreed position, which we are charged by the community to deliver. And staff need our assurance that Council continues to support their efforts to work to create a better environment. And there's no point of investing millions of dollars to increase the number of trees if we're going to clear mature trees in our parks. If people think a park is not a suitable place for a tree, I don't know where it is. Now, as I said before, the city's doing everything, cutting back the trees to the property line and investing into arborist reports. And the city will continue to manage the trees as we do with a lot of similar trees. And there's a lot of these types of trees in Willetton. And once you start clearing them for these reasons, where do you stop? So again, I recognise the situation the resident finds themselves in, but I cannot support removing these trees. And I hope Council feels the same.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Anyone wish to speak against the officer's recommendation or speak on the matter? Councillor Sweeney.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Yes, look, I've heard what the Deputy Mayor's had to say, and he's quite right in terms of speaking about our policies, our ET 525 and our urban policy as far as our trees and our tree canopy, and I don't disagree with anything that he says. I'm very supportive of those sustainability strategies that we have at the City of Canning. But the problem for me is that it all around this is around fairness. And it wasn't so long ago, councillors, that we had an exact same application, exactly the same, only a while ago, where a resident put in an application to have a tree chopped down because it was a nuisance. It was dropping leaves. It was posing a safety risk, and it was damaging a fence. And the city engaged an arborist, and the arborist did a report, and the outcome of that report is almost identical to the report that we have in front of us. So I think with this one for the size of the trees was probably more significant in terms of risk. Councillor Jacobs, if you've got a problem, do you want to say something while I'm talking, or if you've got an issue?
I was just answering a question from Deputy
Councillors,
Mayor.
I'll just get you to just hold fire. Thanks very much. Thank you. Continue.
Thank you. So, you know, as far as I'm concerned, as much as I'm in support of all our sustainability strategies, I find myself in a position that when this application a while ago from Canning Vale came before council, and it was exactly the same, the resident knew the tree was there when he moved in, like this resident here in Willetton. So there's no difference, there's no separation here. And when it came to council, the council was unanimous in that decision to support the resident. Now, we can't have two sets of rules. Unfortunately, I'm left with a decision where we have one set of rules for Canning Vale, and we have one set of rules for Willetton residents. So if we've already made a decision, and we can say yes, we can say every case is different, but this is not one of those cases. This case is identical to the previous case. So in terms of this resident, and quite clearly by the emails that have gone back and forth, there is an additional aspect of emotional stress that is involved with this family from these trees, which is ongoing and has been for some time. Now, as councillors, I think we need to pay attention to this, and I think we need to be fair. We need to apply the same set of rules as we did for the resident in Canning Vale, just like we're going to make this decision. So on that basis, I find myself saying that I can't agree with the officer's recommendation, and I'm going to speak against it, and I'm going to support the resident of Willetton, just like this council supported the resident of Canning Vale. There can't be two different types of residents Can't have two different decisions, one in Canning Vale and one in Willetton. It has to be the same. We have to be consistent as a council, otherwise we will be laughable. So for those reasons, and seeing that we have two exactly identical cases, I will be voting against this motion and support of the residents.
I might just speak first
Mr
before
Mayor,
I go to
first, can I raise a point of order under 7.15 of the standing orders? I just want to make a personal explanation.
Yeah, go ahead.
Just as
Deputy
part
Mayor.
of the council who voted on that item that Councillor Sweeney referred to.
Go ahead.
I voted against removing the tree and it was not unanimous. In fact, I think Councillor Sweeney himself voted against it. So I think it was about 6-5. So as someone that voted against it, I want it on the record that it was not unanimous.
Okay, thank you. So it wasn't unanimous, Councillor. And look, I will speak just quickly on the matter, but and I hadn't intended to. But Councillor Sweeney, we've got a responsibility here to provide information to this council that is accurate. And I heard you say at least 5 times that this is exactly identical to the report that came to council. I was sitting on that council. That's completely wrong. In that instance, those trees were causing significant structural damage to assets on that private property, including to a brick wall, I believe, and also to the driveway. That's not what we have in front of us tonight. It's not exactly identical. This man is complaining about trees in a park that have been there for half a century, not street trees that were actually planted there by the council on his own verge. It's a completely different matter. It's not exactly the same. It's a very, very different matter. And we are consistent here as a council. We have been consistently advocating to improve and expand our tree canopy. And that's why we have a urban forest strategy here that was adopted by this council. Councillor James, why are you waving your hand around?
For you, but I just have to do a 7.15 after you, if that's okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. But this is not that case. This gentleman purchased the property in good faith, but he knew he was backing onto a park, and he could see when he bought the property that there were a number of massive trees at the back of the property. This council, this city, has invested, I would expect, an extraordinary amount of money over the last few years in trimming those very large trees back to the property line, as you might require, and at our expense. So I don't accept that this is identical. In fact, I completely am of the opposite view, and I would ask those councillors that are on this council now to remember that matter in South Acre Drive in Canning Vale, because I remember it like yesterday. And it is not exactly the same, it's completely different. And it's proper that this council deliberates on matters on a case-by-case basis, and that's why the matter is before us tonight. And I'm not here as a mayor to be looking at removing 50-year-old trees in a park because of the complaint of one resident. And I'm sorry that Dr. Lynn has an abject objection to having these trees behind his property, but perhaps that should have been a consideration by him at the time he bought his home, which was only a few years ago. So yeah, that's all I wanted to say. I didn't want to really get into it, but I couldn't sit here in all conscience and listen to Councillor Sweeney say what he said, so I have to say what I know to be true. I'm going to go, first of all, sorry to Councillor Jacobs, and then I'll come to Councillor Spencer-Teo.
Yeah, thanks.
Councillor Jacobs.
7.15 personal explanation, if I could do one quickly, regarding the question that Councillor Sweeney. I was just clarifying to another councillor exactly what you were talking about. I wasn't making any arguments, and I just clarified it as Canning Vale. So no disrespect intended. I was just asking a question to help us better understand.
Thank you for your clarification.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Councillor Spencer-Teo.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. I also feel like I need to correct some of the misinformation that was stated by Councillor Sweeney. The one in Canning Vale was one tree. This is 4 trees that we're talking about here. It is not identical. We also have 3 new councillors on this council who are not part of that decision. So again, this council did not decide to remove that one tree on South Acre Drive. And I have never voted since my time on council, and that South Acre Drive tree was one of the first decisions I made as part of this council, and I too voted against it. So 100% was not unanimous, and I believe the Deputy Mayor is correct that it literally just scraped through by 1 vote. I do support the officer's recommendation. Like I said, I've never supported the removal of any mature tree on council land, and I never would. I'm not going to start now, otherwise where would we stop? How do we pick and choose? I think an annual inspection of these trees is very fair and reasonable, and like I said, I support this officer recommendation. Thank you.
Councillor Singh, did I see your hand up? I'm sorry if I got it wrong.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. You have actually answered the question I was going to ask.
Which was?
Which was basically, as I was not on the council when this Canning Vale tree decision came, and I had no idea what Councillor Sweeney is comparing to. And I was about to ask, was it really identical? And listening to your comments and Councillor Spencer Teo's comment, 1 tree versus 4, a tree causing structural damage versus tree dropping leaves, I'm concerned about the information being provided to the council by Councillor.
Question is? The question, do you have a question?
The question is, can I please ask Director to confirm the differences between the 2 cases, which I'm very glad that yourself and Councillor Spencer Teo have already done. Just would like to get some more information if possible. Thank you very much.
Director Bowe.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My recollection is that the tree on South Acre Drive was a street tree that was a London plane tree, a single tree. The difference being with the report presented tonight is that there are 4 mature native trees and they are planted in the park. So they're the 2 differing positions of the 2 different cases.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Singh. Anyone else before we... Councillor Sweeney?
Yeah, just for clarity, because it's been raised, just so that everyone's quite clear. In terms of being identical...
Councillor Sweeney, you don't have a right to actually speak or clarify any matter on this. If you've got a question, I'll entertain it, but you've had your chance to speak on the matter. You don't get an opportunity to kind of clarify what it is that you said.
I wasn't going to. I was going to ask Mr. Bowe a question.
Yep, ask the question then.
Mr. Bowe, my understanding was that the similarities that in this case and the last case is that it was a nuisance tree. It had significant leaf drop. It posed a safety risk, although it was low, according to the arborist report, and there was the threat to damaging a boundary fence. Is that not what is the same?
It wasn't a threat. It had damage to the fence. Director Bowe? I'll ask you to be specific, Director Bowe. If the 2 matters are different, Councillor Sweeney has asked the question and I'm concerned about the misinformation that's been introduced to 3 new councillors. I'll ask you to clarify, please.
My view is that the 2 situations are different, Mr. Mayor, and present different challenges to the residents who have requested their removal.
Thank you. The matters are different. I will then ask, unless anyone else wants to speak on the matter before I hand back to Councillor Jacobs to close debate on the matter. Thank you. And Councillor Sweeney, I'm not trying to make an example of you, but you're actually required by the Local Government Act to actually provide information in this chamber which is accurate and which is not misleading. And you can't just come in here and say that it was a unanimous decision of council when it was not, and to say that they were 2 exactly identical items when they were not. And you've really almost influenced the decision-making of council tonight. So I'm just asking you to please be really careful with what you say in this chamber, because unless it's accurate, you really shouldn't be, well, you don't have a right to say it. You just got to be very careful how you actually phrase things. Councillor Jacobs, I'll ask you to close debate, please.
Thanks,
and then we'll
Mr.
put the
Mayor.
matter to the vote.
Just rebut some points. One was in Canning Vale, one was in Willetton. The 16 suburbs, I try and be as consistent as possible, but it's a case-by-case basis. And that's why we've got this sort of stuff coming to council, because it is can be controversial, and it is something that I think is good that the council considers. And I think it also gives an important function to our residents to say, okay, we've asked the director, but I want to appeal. So that gives them a venting capacity, which I think is good in a democratic system. 1 tree was foreign, 4 trees native, 1 was on the verge. These points have already been made, but I'm just rebutting the points. And the other one's in a park. I supported actually the tree removal in Canning Vale on a case-by-case basis. And I've also had a look at this case, and they're very, very different. And one of the main sticking points for me is it's actually a park. It's a park. So you start cutting, I think the point was made by a few other councillors, you start cutting down trees in parks for residents that have moved in because they wanted to be near the park, then what is the value of the park and why have you moved to be near the park? So I think that's pretty much it, Mr. Mayor. I thank the councillor for his comments. It's quite brave, but I've just had to make an assessment, and this is my assessment. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Jacobs. Councillors, will show of hands, please. All in favour of refusing to remove the 4 park trees, please raise your hand. Thank you. That is 9 in favour. Those against? Councillor Sweeney. We have 9 councillors voting in favour of this officer's recommendation, which is to refuse the applicant's request for the removal of the 4 park trees, and only 1 in favour, only 1 against, and that is Councillor Sweeney, for the record. Thank you, Governance. We move on now to item 13.5, which is the responsible officer being Dr. Sarah McQuaid, the Director of Canning Community. There are no reports from that Directorate this evening. Item 14, motions of which previous notice has been given. The responsible officer for this report is Warren Bowe, the Director of Canning Environment. It's notice of motion 011 of 22, the title of the nom being WALGA, Advocacy on Environmental Issues. The notice of motion is on page 107 of tonight's agenda and is on the screen. The nom was introduced by the Deputy Mayor. The matter has been moved by the Deputy Mayor. Thank you. I don't have your name on my sheet here. Sorry, Deputy Mayor. And a seconder, please. I've got Councillor Spencer Teo. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Look, I'll try not to be too lengthy, given that we've tried to provide as much detail within the rationale as possible, which I hope covers most of the points. So basically, we're hoping to use WALGA, with your support, as a vehicle to lead change in an area where successive state governments really haven't done anything, and it's a bit of a vacuum at the moment. So the first part of the motion, with respect to the identification of private land holdings for macropod translocations, it's quite self-explanatory. So as Perth develops further, there's more and more animals, including kangaroos, that are becoming isolated and needing translocating, such as the Canning Vale precinct has put the highlight on that in the City of Canning. But discussions with DBCA highlight that there's limited Crown land for kangaroos, and so we need to identify private land holdings to translocate large populations. Unfortunately, as it currently stands, it's left up to the individual entities, such as in this case the City of Canning, to identify those private landholders. So we hope that using WALGA, especially given their network, but also the fact that it's made up of most local governments in the state, both regional and metropolitan, that we can identify or use WALGA as an advocacy tool to identify private landholders where they could take on kangaroos, not just for us, but there's a number of these situations across Perth as Perth develops, especially around Metronet lines. So part 2 of the motion basically aims to use WALGA again to advocate for a planning instrument to be developed by the state government that ensures a holistic strategic approach to environmental issues where development is proposed in precincts that have multiple government land owners. So currently when animals are impacted by development, there are many examples where animals are just moved on to the next parcel of land, and as land inevitably dries up, it becomes a big problem. So there needs to be a strategic assessment way long before it gets to development to work out what's going to be done. So Canning Vale and Jandakot's obviously seen much development over the years, and is a good example where there needs to be a holistic strategic approach to environmental issues, especially with migratory animals. So this motion is focused on government land, but it's not really, it's also an issue obviously with private developments, but with this motion we're hoping just to focus on government land because private can be a bit more complex, and I think that hopefully advocating for this, again, Canning Vale is a classic example of where there's multiple government landowners, that we can look at a planning instrument which brings everyone together. Currently in Canning Vale, there's no obligation for adjacent landholders to be involved, but they should. I mean, these animals are migrating on their land as well, and it shouldn't be up to us to deal with it. So the state government should be abrogating its responsibility by doing nothing because it ends up with an adverse impact on the animals. So we want to ensure the best outcomes possible, and that involves strategic planning. So I hope that you can support this and we can push it through WALGA and hopefully affect some change. Thanks.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Kunza. And Councillor Spencer Teo, have you got anything you'd like to add?
Yeah, just briefly. As Deputy Mayor said, the kangaroos on sites that have been earmarked for development is not just a City of Canning issue. In fact, our mob of around about 250 to 300 kangaroos pales into insignificance when you look at the issues in our northern suburbs, our northern suburb councils. We've already have a translocation site earmarked for the trial next year. There's no issue with that. And once we can successfully demonstrate translocations work, we will need to identify larger sites. And it's in the best interest of our roos, or any kangaroos, to stay together in their family groups, which could be as high as 20 to 30 individuals, including joeys. So I guess you could say the first part of this notice of motion is forward planning. We need to address our resident kangaroo populations, but if there's a legacy that we can leave behind which will assist other local governments in the future, then the second part of this motion paves the way for that. I went into this kangaroo translocation with my eyes open, and I was well aware of the difficulties and hurdles that we would face. We all know the preferred management method is culling because it's cheaper and it's faster. I had hoped for support from the state government, but for now we're on our own, and if WALGA can assist by using their connections to help us and other local governments relocate displaced macropods, then it's certainly worth a try. Therefore, councillors, I really hope you join us in supporting this notice of motion tonight, not just for Canning Vale's roos, but for the greater metro roos too. Thank you.
Thank you. Just for the purpose of the report, I might just ask staff, I don't propose to amend the notice of motion, but I think the title should be Western Australian Local Government Association, in brackets, WALGA, Advocacy on Environmental Issues. I don't think it refers to WALGA and with its full title anywhere in the report, and I think 10 years from now, if WALGA is still around, that'd be fabulous, but people may, at home watching this recording tonight, even be wondering who the hell or what the hell our WALGA is. So that is what it is for the purpose of the recording. So we might, Deputy Mayor, just get that slight amendment changed. I support the motion. Does anyone else wish to speak on the matter before we put it to the vote? Councillor Sabiri, thank you.
Thank you. I have to say I do support the motion, but I just want to say that I feel we must try to be more consistent. As councillors, we have the opportunity to vote on these matters when they come to council. Projects like Metronet come to council, we can have our say. Projects like that Jandakot Eastern Link Road come to council, we can vote on them. And similar to Southern Link Road, those kind of projects come to council. As councillors, we have the opportunity to vote on these. So the problem with the kangaroos isn't that it's just too many kangaroos suddenly, it's because there's been too much land clearing. And yes, there's been a lot of land clearing outside of City of Canning, but there has also been within the City of Canning. So I just want to say that we have to, we can't just say, let's keep the kangaroos, but continue to clear and clear. So, yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Anyone wish to speak against the matter before we put the matter back to the vote? Thank you. By a show of hands, can I please put the item to the vote? Those in favour? Thank you. That's all in favour, 10 in favour, none against. Thank you. That matter has been passed. We move to the second item, which is by Councillor Parkinson from the Nicholson ward. It's NOM 012 of 22. It's a review of proposed playground renewal projects, Town Planning Scheme 23, in brackets TPS 23. The notice of motion is on screen. It was discussed at last week's agenda briefing session. Councillor Parkinson is the mover for this matter. May I have a seconder, please? Councillor Spencer Teo. Thank you. Councillor Parkinson, did you want to start us off?
Yeah, sure. My first point is we should never underestimate how important playgrounds are to our community, which is clearly evidenced in the community's strategy plan, where it identifies playgrounds, reserves, ovals as a number 2 priority. Firstly, let me thank Director Bowe and his staff and others for working on this motion with me. There are currently 60 playgrounds in line for renewal that are rated average across the Canning Borough. 11 of these playgrounds are in TPS 23 area and date back to their originality between 1990 and 2010 of when they were installed. TPS funds were originally collected from people subdividing or developing in the areas of Parkwood, Linwood, Ferndale and a part of the Riverton. All of the land acquisitions of TPS 23 have now been completed and there is a balance of just over $1 million in the trust fund. Significant investment, the reason why I'm bringing this motion forward is significant investment, almost $6 million over the next 2 years have been committed to upgrade the facilities at Hossack Reserve in Parkwood. However, there is no commitment to renew or replace the existing tired playground facilities which are located next to this facility. One of the most common forms of communication and feedback I receive is about the tired playground at this reserve and others. We do know that the Department of Planning, Lands and Heritage states that such funds can be used for improvement and development of public open space, which includes playgrounds and infrastructure such as barbecues and seating. Rather than using municipal funds to fund these renewals, it makes more sense to me to use the funds which were collected for the purpose outlined within the town planning scheme. It also frees up municipal funds to be used on the remaining 49 playgrounds which will need to be addressed at some stage in the future. I hope you agree, councillors, that these funds will benefit all of our community, not just those within the town planning scheme. It will mean all our playgrounds move up the list, but municipal funds are only used for those areas where a scheme is not in place. I hope you will all support this notice of motion. And I think probably TPS 23 is a once-in-a-generational opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Spencer-Teo.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Firstly, congratulations to Councillor Parkinson on presenting your first notice of motion, and I have to say it's a good one at that. As the report states, there's 11 playgrounds within TPS 23. Not only that, there's Ferndale Flats and Adenia Park in Riverton, where the community have requested infrastructure other than playgrounds such as barbecue, shelter and seating. Throughout the budget process, Councillors Bain and Deputy Mayor Kunza have advocated for these on behalf of their community, but there's been no funding available within municipal funds to accommodate these requests. Obviously, with the approval of the department, these things can be provided under TPS 23. This notice of motion really is a win-win for everyone in Canning, including us councillors. Not only do the areas of Ferndale, Linwood, Parkwood and a small bit of Riverton get the upgrades that they need and infrastructure improvements requested by the community, municipal funds won't be used, which in turn, as Councillor Parkinson said, 49 playgrounds that remain in the condition of average or below move up the list and they will get done quicker. I honestly can't see any reason not to support this notice of motion, and I look forward to discussing the program in greater detail throughout the budget process early next year. Thanks, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to speak on the matter? Councillor Bain, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. No, I support the notice of motion, and I'm really pleased that the city has decided to spread the monies around that's available in TPS 23 around the suburbs which are in that area. That's really pleasing to see. And as Councillor Spencer-Teo mentioned, I hope that the potential barbecues at Ferndale Flats might be one of those projects that the city puts forward and brings to us at a future date for consideration, but also there's 3 parks, playgrounds in Linwood that also are on the priority list and are considered average, and hopefully those are also brought forward. But yes, it's a great opportunity for all those suburbs within the TPS 23 area to have facilities upgraded and playgrounds upgraded, and that's an outstanding outcome for the community. Thank you.
Thank you. So, final item of the evening, ladies and gentlemen. Does anyone else wish to speak on the matter? Councillor Singh, go ahead.
Can I please ask a question,
Of course
Mr.
you can.
Mayor?
Yep.
The one property transaction, question to the director. The one property transaction pending for TPS 23, is that plot 396 Willery Drive. Is that right?
Director.
Yeah, through Mr Mayor, no, it relates to a site in Ferndale, so it's nothing to do with Willery Drive. The last bit of public open space that the city needed, or that the last transaction that required a contribution, was the subdivision that bordered Willery Park. So there's a subdivision with a retaining wall with about 20 or so lots. That landowner was required to provide a contribution, and that was the last collection of public open space monies into the fund. So they occurred about 6 to 9 months ago. So there's no other transactions. There is a transaction relating to a land holding in Ferndale, but that has nothing to do with public open space.
Thank you. Councillor Singh, to answer your question.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I would like to say I fully support this motion. Very good pickup by Councillor Parkinson. $1 million sitting in funds which can be really used to improve our parks. So I really support this motion. Thank you.
Yeah, terrific. Well done, Councillor Parkinson. Deputy Mayor.
I just wanted to also, through you, congratulate Councillor Parkinson for bringing this up, because it frees up money on other projects as well and delivers outcomes in the community rather than sitting in a reserve fund. And also commend Councillor Bain, who raised this last month too, for a similar purpose. And I think it's fantastic to see out of the square ideas in terms of investing in infrastructure at a time where we're trying to do so much with limited funds.
Yeah, well done, all. Thank you. Anyone else wish to speak before we close debate and actually put the matter to the vote? Thank you. There's no debate required, no further debate. No one has spoken against the matter. Councillor Parkinson, well done. It's a terrific initiative. I'll put the matter to the vote. All in favour, please raise their hand. Thank you. The matter's been passed unanimously, 10 in favour and none against. We move on to item 15, which is urgent business. There is no urgent business this evening. Confidential matters, of which tonight there are none, at item 16, and at closure. There being no further business, I now declare the meeting closed. The time being 8:07 p.m. sharp. And I'd like to thank everybody for their attendance, both here personally and online. Thank you. Thank you, governance. I'll ask you to stop the recording.